The Walk of Shame. This is not a documentary filmed from a distance. This is an invitation to walk with us through a place America has collectively chosen to forget, the streets of Philadelphia, where the homeless crisis has reached a catastrophic peak in 2025. We are not just observing urban decay, we are navigating a landscape of human suffering where every sidewalk is a hospital bed and every alleyway is a place of desperation. This walk is a confrontation. It forces us to ask, how can a nation defined by its wealth allow such a profound, concentrated humanitarian disaster to persist publicly, visibly, and continuously? The air itself feels heavy with neglect. The geography of despair, the sheer density of human misery here defies description. Every square foot of public space is co-opted. Makeshift tents, scattered biohazard waste, the chilling silence of fentanyl and Tranq sedation. We are walking through the most explicit evidence of systemic failure. The crisis is not merely a lack of housing, it's a profound breakdown of the social contract. The challenge is not just the drugs, it's the moral indifference that allows a population to remain here, suffering catastrophic physical degradation from Tranq wounds and constant exposure, while the rest of the city attempts to look away. This walk is about holding up a mirror to the nation, asking, what is the true cost of forgetting? The intimacy of decay. As we walk, the decay becomes intimate. We are witnessing conditions that should not exist in the developed world. The lack of sanitation, the constant exposure to the elements, the sight of medical distress that goes untreated, it all speaks to a single, devastating reality. The unhoused here are forced to live outside the bounds of civilized society. The public health risk is palpable, from needle stick hazards to the concentration of infectious diseases that we saw linked to the crisis in Skid Row. Yet, the city's response is characterized by the high barrier shelter system rules that the most severely addicted simply cannot meet, effectively turning the streets into the only available permanent option. The normalization of the unthinkable. One of the most insidious effects of this crisis is the normalization of the unthinkable. We walk past individuals frozen mid-slump by Tranq, and the environment around them moves on. This indifference is the core of the ethical failure. How long must a disaster persist before it ceases to be shocking and simply becomes a backdrop for daily life? This normalization is the city's defensive mechanism, turning human suffering into ambient noise. This phenomenon ensures that the public will tolerate the crisis indefinitely, providing zero political pressure for the radical, expensive solutions required. Our walk is intended to disrupt that normalization, to force the acknowledgement that this forgotten hell is not a static place, it is a live-action, ongoing mass casualty event. The fiscal absurdity of the revolving door. The solution to the forgotten hell is not a mystery, it is a lack of political will to fund it. As we have detailed previously, the continuous use of police sweeps and incarceration, the revolving door, is the most expensive, least effective solution. Taxpayers are burdened with costs exceeding $40,000 annually per person to cycle individuals through the jail and emergency room systems, only for them to return to the streets with a 129 times higher risk of fatal overdose. This financial absurdity is the direct result of choosing the punitive model over the restorative one. The money being spent to sustain this failure could and should be reallocated to fund permanent, low-barrier medical stabilization centers and supportive housing that actually offer a pathway to recovery. The national failure of acknowledgement. The most profound failure is the national indifference. Philadelphia's crisis is not isolated. It is inextricably linked to the economic decay of the Rust Belt, the lethal drug supply from the southern border, and the national crisis of housing unaffordability. Yet, Washington, D.C. treats this as a local public safety issue, delegating the responsibility for a national humanitarian disaster to overburdened municipal budgets. The truth is that America's inability to solve this crisis is a direct result of its refusal to acknowledge the interconnectivity of its own systemic failures. We walk through this hell to remind the nation that the site of Kensington is not an anomaly, it is a prophecy for any American city that chooses to prioritize political convenience over human dignity. The imperative for low-barrier compassion. The solution is radical only in its compassion. It demands abandoning the failed punitive model and immediately establishing comprehensive, low-barrier medical stabilization centers. This means accepting individuals as they are, providing immediate, clean shelter, medical care for Tranq wounds, and detox resources without the impossible precondition of sobriety. This is the only way to save lives now and begin the long process of rehabilitation. The goal must shift from managing the visual optics of the crisis to actively interrupting the cycle of death and disease. The moral test for America is whether it will continue to fund the revolving door or finally invest in a pathway that treats addiction as a chronic, complex illness requiring medical intervention. The final confrontation. We conclude this walk with the understanding that Kensington is not a distant problem. It is a monument to our own collective failure. We walk through America's forgotten hell to remind the comfortable majority of the price being paid for their indifference. The continued existence of this humanitarian disaster is a moral stain on the American dream. The time for convenient silence is over. Share this documentary to force a national acknowledgement of the crisis. Subscribe to America's Uncomfortable Truth as we continue to hold the system accountable for the failures that actively destroy human life.